the basement. I'm just going to give a quick video update because I'm going to be doing some very major changes here shortly, and I just wanted to record the state of everything as it is now. So I'm going to give you a quick walk around of everything besides staging and dispatching, just most of the visible area of the layout, tell you what's staying, what's going, and why. Let's take a look. So the line emerges out of the back end around the Goat Creek Canyon at Creston, goes through the town of Creston, which is one of my favorite spots, honestly. It's got its own switcher, it's just the right amount of trackage, it's just the right amount of density, and it has a lot of industry, but it's not too difficult to switch. That's all staying. Then we come across the Kootenay Landing Bridge and start making our way down Kootenay Lake, which is, if I'm being honest, a little bit wide. This aisle could be a little bit wider than it is now. I did end up making it a little bit narrower than it should have been, but there's nobody really working in it, so it's fine. So we're coming along Kootenay Lake. You can see all the big peaks of the Selkirks south of Nelson. And we come up to Proctor, where the barge slip is going in. And it looks like, what is this, number 90 coming through right now? Yeah, they're looking pretty short for today. Probably about, what, 15 cars in there? And they're coming out of Nelson. And so this is Nelson Yard. I'm going to switch to an ultra-wide view here. Nelson is one of those places where everybody ends up being all at once. You know how it is. Despite how big your layout may be, there's always a time when there's 6 guys trying to cram into a 1-person spot. And one of my big problems here is that, first off, this is only about 2 feet wide in here. And then you've got this little pinch point, which is about hip width, has a little bubble here, and then comes around the corner and gets narrow again. So looking back, you've got one spot for the Nelson Yard operator, and then they're switching it from the east, they're going back and forth, but then you also frequently on the second level have people switching the sawmill. I originally designed it so it could be switched from the west, but those of you who have operated here know full well that it is way too close to Castlegar for that to actually work. So the plan is to fix this. I'm going to keep going around and tell you more later. So west out of Nelson, we're on the boundary sub now. We come across the big bridge at Tagham, through Castlegar itself, and around the corner from Castlegar is the Selgar pulp mill and the Pope and Talbot sawmill. The craft switcher is still here from last job. It's about, I think, 28 cars coming back to Nelson, so it's beefy. And all of this was actually the first track I laid, so it's all a little bit sketchy. So it goes around there, and I don't think I got a good sense of things, so I'm going to turn around right quick and show you the aisle here. Actually, it has a 16-inch pinch point here, and then it's about 18 or 20 inches from the side of the helix on the left to Selgar at the right. And there's someone in here the entire time. You cannot get past. So the westbound trains then go up the hill through the Labarth Tunnel, across McCormick Creek Bridge, and then into the helix. So oftentimes operators will actually not come past this point because they can't get past, there's no room. Then it does this 4.5 turn helix, which is not great. And then we're on the second level. We're up at Shields. And this is another narrow point. Yet another narrow point. Shield siding is about 1,100 feet long. So it can only meet shorter trains. Usually the trains that are meeting at Shields are not the main trains on the railway. So the passenger train is shorter, the ore train is shorter, but the way freights are usually too long for this siding. Then it comes up, goes through a tunnel. We're on the other side of the narrower aisle that is staying. Come across Fire Creek Bridge into the Bulldog Tunnel. And then we're getting pretty high here, up at tunnel siding. And then we reach the summit at Farron, which is a nod under. Very thin benchwork here. So that is actually about 5'8" or 9 inches. And then we come around Farron. Just going to say goodbye to 90 going in out of Creston. Just starting up a grade to get into staging. Then up at Farron there's often a meet here, but it's the only siding between Castlegar and Grand Forks that is over 1,500 feet. And there's often work here, and there's often work at Castlegar and Grand Forks. So the sidings often get very clogged up. Now we're headed down the slope on the west side. We go through Paulson Gap, which I don't believe I've shown footage of yet. And yeah, this is the scenic highlight of the railway. Background was done by my partner Adrian, who is an illustrator and obviously a good one. So we're staying in this aisle, and then we're coming to the cliffs above Fife. There's a limestone tipple here. Go over a, 500-ish foot bridge, and we're into Grand Forks. There's a sawmill here, which is separated from the town itself by a river. Grand Forks has a Y, comes around the corner, and the small yard. And then from the small yard, it disappears off over the swing bridge, which is below the knot under, into staging. So here are all the problems. Aside from the incredibly narrow aisle here and here that I covered, there are often people, 2 or 3 even, at Grand Forks at once, 2 or 3 or even 4 at Nelson. So this layout was never designed to hold that many people, and it can't. So eventually, what's going to happen, this wall that all this is on is not structural, so it's going to come out, and it is going to go into what is now an empty room on the other side. The room's a bit narrow, so it makes aisles a bit awkward. However, we're going to take all of Nelson as is and just chop it about here and slide everything over into that new room and put it on the far wall. I really like the layout of Grand Forks and the sawmill. So all the way from the right side here, around the corner with the Y, and the sawmill, all the way up to this point, is going to end up on the upper deck on this wall of the new room. And once that is done, there will be nothing in the way here to prevent me from taking this end of the peninsula and swinging it right out into the middle of that room. And that will leave Nelson with at least 6 more inches. Hoping for more, have not quite settled on it, but at least 6 inches, if not 18 inches more aisle space. There will no longer be a pinch point here. There may be a bit of a pinch point here, but I'm going to keep it above 30 inches for sure. At the east end of Nelson is a yard lead that is currently also Proctor siding. That is going to become Kootenay Forestry Products and all the little industries at the east end of town. And then everything from here on is going to stay as is. So Proctor, Fife, etc., and the Kettle River Bridge are staying where they are. But with any luck, I will add Troop Junction to this corner, which is something that has been sorely missed on this railway. And so once that's done, Grand Forks will be further away from Nelson. It will be on the other side of a peninsula from Nelson, so we won't have overlap of operators there. There will be a big space beside Nelson, right about here, which will allow operators to congregate without getting in each other's way. And most importantly, everything that you see past here, this entire peninsula, including the helix, will no longer be in this spot. So instead of being crammed into a little corner, the craft operator will now have all this space, which means they're getting a rolling stool, and people can come visit, and it's going to be nice. So from Castlegar, it will now head around the wall here. There's one telepost under there that I need to avoid, but otherwise it's fair game from about this road onward. So I will probably end up redoing and realigning these switches because honestly they are not my best work. I haven't yet decided if I will be redoing the Rosslyn Sub staging yard or any of the craft trackage, because honestly there's so many more opportunities open to me now. Grand Forks is literally just swung over 90 degrees, so it will also come out at the telepost, and instead of this really awkward looking little going to be hidden by trees concept, I'm probably going to put in the fisherman tunnel, so it will actually disappear into a tunnel instead of just a hole in the backdrop. So the other things that I've been aiming for, aside from having wider aisles everywhere, like I said, Shields is the only siding that is under length, but it's also the only siding between Castlegar and the summit at Farron, all the way over there. which is, I need to check my timetable for that. Whew. It's like 15 scale miles. Scaled up 4 times for the fast clock, so that's like about 3 miles from that point to the summit without having a siding over 1,100 feet. So once the peninsula is swung out, I'm renaming Shields to Kootenay because it honestly fits the trackage much better, what was actually at Kootenay with the section house on the inside of the curve coming across the fill like that. And undecided yet, but down on the lower deck, between the end of the helix down there and Labarth Tunnel, I won't have much more room, but I'm thinking that I should be able to fit an 1,100-foot Shields in between McCormick Creek Bridge and Labarth. I'm going to take all of this out because the track is crap and I don't really like the way it sits. There's way too much space used for it and not enough operational payoff. So that would allow me to have a siding that's full length with no work on it on this side of the hill, just purely used for meets and not having to worry about trains sitting in it. And then over here, west of the bridge, there's also probably 20-25 feet of run between what is now here and what is going to be over there. So that is probably going to be cascade siding or gilpin, somewhere on the grasslands, you know, with these mountains as a backdrop. And so this will give a lot more operational flexibility as well. And the last thing I really want is distance between Nelson and Castlegar, 25.7 miles on the prototype, 4 feet on my railway, which is a real pain for trains that are going into the Rosslyn sub. Because imagine it, you come out of the Rosslyn sub, you call the dispatcher, you get a clearance, you get your orders, you sign the register, you drive for maybe 5 minutes at most, you get to Nelson Station, you arrive, you sign the register, and your train's done. Take your power to the shops. So having just the outside of that room will add at least 5 minutes of run. And I think that's everything for goals. I really do like the way Grand Forks is, so I'm trying to keep it as much the way it is as possible. Although I'm thinking of expanding this particular track out to the end of the siding, because Coal Chute Road will be able to be past the industry here, and that will allow a backtrack to lift and drop on for the way freights, as opposed to having to cram everything into the yard. Every track in the yard is in JMRI, so everything is prescribed where it needs to be, but having a backtrack would give you that flexibility, and that would not be in JMRI. Alright, so hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Obviously, that's a lot of work for me to do, so it's going to take probably all of this year for the main around the walls part, and then we'll see how long it takes to get rid of all this stuff and move it around. I talked a lot, and I'll probably try to do a blog post on it at a later time, but this is all recorded in one take, so I apologize if I got any of the stuff wrong. I'll give you an update as things go, and Happy New Year all.